People assume because I'm an architect that I watch TV shows about property design and construction. No! The last thing I want to do after a long day in the office dealing with buildings is to spend my downtime watching other people doing the same thing.
Oh great, all day on a building site and I come home to this.
What I actually enjoy watching are character-based dramas like The Sopranos or Breaking Bad, and Succession on HBO is right up there with the best of them. It's that good. The dialogue, plot, cinematography and pacing are all excellent. Now, you might be thinking this is a form of escapism. After a long day in my office, I want to watch super rich people doing outrageous things in exotic locations. But actually, there are lessons here for anyone who regularly works with private clients. You see, I've run my own architecture practice in the UK since 2009, and in that time, I've had to work for a small number of truly terrible people. But because of client confidentiality, I can't tell you about them. So the next best thing is to draw comparisons with the characters in Succession. The show is based on the lives of the super-rich Roy family, a collection of awful people who are absolutely compelling to watch. Now, on the surface, super-rich people would seem to be the ideal client for an architect, with opportunities for both corporate and private buildings. Wouldn't any architect want to be commissioned by the Roys? No, believe me, I learned this the hard way. There are 4 different types of terrible client in that family. I've met all of them in my career and I'm going to show you how to spot them. But before we start talking about terrible clients, let's look at what I think makes a great client, just so you can tell the difference. Great clients understand they are not paying for drawings. Sure, drawings will happen, but clients are really paying for an architect's independent professional judgment. The independent part is the important bit. You do not want a professional to blindly follow your instructions. If your doctor or lawyer did this, you would end up dead or in jail. It's our job to tell clients things they might not want to hear. We work out how to achieve the optimal outcome, and it may not be what the client originally imagined. Great clients also appreciate the architect is necessary for implementation, not just inspiration. An experienced architect won't just have great ideas, they have great ideas that can actually be built. Great clients respect the architect's network. The best architects work with the best builders, engineers, suppliers, and consultants. Competent people feed off each other when they collaborate. If the client interferes with this team by demanding to be in charge or hiring their friend's kid to do the interior design, it will be a disaster. Now we've got that clear, let's look at the 4 different types of terrible client in Succession. Oh, and in case you haven't watched the show, spoiler alert. Obsessed with power, Logan Roy. The boss man and patriarch of the Roy family, the show's title and main theme revolves around which of his children will succeed him as head of the family firm. Logan is powerful and rich, and while he appreciates money, I don't think he's interested in the trappings of wealth, just the exercise of power. You can see this in the final episode of Season 3, when he visits Matson, the tech billionaire who is negotiating a merger with his firm. The 2 business titans admit they are bored by the kind of villas and scenery that would be amazing to most people.
I get bored easily.
Yeah, everything's boring, isn't it?
Yeah, everything is pretty fucking boring.
Except this.
Logan Roy also believes that every business relationship is competitive. There will always be a winner and a loser, and he says as much in Season 1, Episode 8. He's smiling. It's no good if he's smiling. You screw them out, you chisel them out, you fucking hurt them, and then you watch them squeal. These 2 traits make Logan Roy a potentially terrible client for any architect. He will be inherently uninterested in buildings, materials, or space. You can see from the corporate offices he works in, they are expensive, but they lack a human touch. And any person who sees all business relationships as a competition is not going to appreciate the value of a network, built up by an architect and their collaborators over many years. You can see a hint of this in the first episode of Season 2, where he publicly shortchanges a building contractor who worked on his summer home in the Hamptons. Now, whatever the details of the dispute, Logan's behaviour will backfire on him. Contractors talk, and Logan's reputation among the local building trades and professions will suffer. Any firm thinking of working for him in the future will inflate their fees to cover this possibility, or, more likely, not work for him at all. In a relatively small community like the Hamptons, that can be a significant issue. It is possible to appeal to people who are obsessed with power, but it's a deal with the devil. If they are thinking about their legacy, they might be willing to entertain architectural ideas beyond the utilitarian office or large McMansion. Personally, I would steer clear of people like Logan Roy, but how do you spot them? These are a few clues I've learned to look out for over the years. No hobbies. Power obsessives only work, nothing else. They have neither the time or inclination to develop outside interests, especially in things like art, playing sport, or musical instruments, all of which require intensive practice. If I am invited to meet a potential client, I always look for interests beyond their career. Aside from helping me form a fuller picture of the person whose home I might design, the absence of hobbies is often a red flag. Multiple divorces. I'm not judging people whose marriages have ended, but I am not the only person to point out that some power-hungry men seem to have several wives and numerous affairs. Plenty of people draw a connection between these and the tendency to be untrustworthy and selfish. In the show, Logan Roy is on his third marriage, and this seems to have failed by season 3. The lives of famous people are often public knowledge, making this kind of assessment feasible, but less conspicuous clients won't advertise their marital history. One way for an architect to probe this area respectfully is to inquire about a potential client's children and grandchildren. Poor relationships with their family. The entire Succession show revolves around this psychodrama. It probably all begins with the power obsessive not having time for anything other than work. They didn't have any hobbies or interests to share with their kids as they were growing up, and that translates into a distant relationship as adults. If the power obsessive is especially difficult, their adult children may keep their own children away from the grandparent. You can learn a lot about a person seeing how they interact with children. If a grown adult feels comfortable speaking to a child, they will probably make an okay client. Delusional people. Conor Roy. Next on our list of terrible clients architects should avoid are delusional people. These are rare. I've only met one in my career, but oh boy, they are something. They have a genuine belief they are put on this earth to do great things, and often become frustrated when others don't appreciate their efforts. Conor Roy is Logan's eldest son, the only child from his first marriage. Conor is a piece of work, and thankfully this kind of delusion is usually very obvious to outside observers, so shouldn't be too hard for an architect to spot. If you haven't seen the show, this is a summary of Conor Roy's character. He's in his late 40s and has never had a serious job. He's in a relationship with a younger woman whom the show implies was an escort when they met. He funds his lady's dream to write a Broadway play, which flops spectacularly. He fancies himself as an historian and collects memorabilia, including paying a large sum for Napoleon's penis, which turns out to be fake. Oh, and he is seriously considering running for President of the United States of America. Has a campaign team, the whole works, and considers himself to be a national figure. If an architect were unfortunate enough to work for a delusional person, there is no telling how bad it might get. The one delusional client I worked for wanted to build housing units in a remote farming community. He believed because these would be sustainable, eco-homes, the neighbours would be grateful, but the neighbours just wanted to be left in peace. When the local planning department told him this, he screamed down the phone at them. I didn't work with him after that and made sure to avoid his type afterwards. Stupid people. Kendall Roy. Stupid people are not the same as ignorant or uneducated people. Stupid people can be educated and have the appearance of competence, but the defining characteristic of a stupid person is that they repeatedly do things which harm themselves and those around them for no apparent advantage. Stupid people have poor impulse control, and this type of behaviour is repetitive. They keep on doing stupid things and no one wins. Kendall Roy is the eldest son from Logan's second marriage. In season 1, he was the heir apparent until he failed a test set by his father. He has drug abuse issues, a failed marriage, tried to engineer a hostile takeover of the firm, which failed, and also crashed a car while high, killing the passenger. All of this before one of the best scenes in the series, where he publicly accused his father of knowingly enabling a sexual predator in the company. This was an attempt to oust Logan and take over the firm, but it failed because Kendall didn't have any real evidence. The government eventually demanded a large fine be paid by the firm, and the actual victims of the sexual predator didn't get any justice. Meanwhile, Kendall's reputation continued to decline. Nobody got anything out of this. Kendall's own family know he's stupid. They regularly tell him.
My hunch is that you're going to get fucked. Because I've seen you get fucked a lot.
I should say that I enjoy the character of Kendall Roy and feel a degree of sympathy for this deeply flawed man. But as an architect, I would avoid people like him at all costs. They are impulsive and regularly do things without thinking about consequences. They get caught up in the moment, like Kendall did with his 40th birthday party. It was massively over the top, and he didn't like any of the guests or actually enjoy himself. If he took the same approach to commissioning a private home, the end result would be the same. Lots of ideas, no real focus, and a deep sense of disappointment with the end result. So how do you spot stupid people? The one way I know is to challenge them directly on their ideas. Stupid people often feel threatened by competence. In season 3, Kendall's lawyer, who is widely respected, challenges him on his behaviour after a meeting with the Department of Justice. He fired her. Sometimes it's for the best. Get out before stupid people do real damage to your reputation. Dysfunctional Couples. Siobhan and Tom. I do a lot of work for couples. Family homes make up the majority of my projects. Construction is stressful, and I sometimes feel like I'm an unqualified marriage counsellor. I know from my own experience, and from talking to my professional colleagues, that managing the dynamic between a couple and their architect is not easy, but it becomes impossible if the couple are dysfunctional. There are several dysfunctional pairings in the show Succession. Jerry and Roman, Tom and Greg, Logan and Marcia, but the ultimate one is Logan's daughter Siobhan and her husband Tom. Siobhan wants to succeed her father and get the top job running the family firm. She marries Tom because he seems to love her while not being a threat to her career ambitions.
You're scared to compete. You're marrying a man fathoms beneath you because you don't want to risk being betrayed.
Tom doesn't really know who he is, and his wife sees him as an accessory rather than a central part of her life. She even asked for an open marriage on their wedding night. The power dynamic in this marriage is totally lopsided, but why would this couple make such a bad client for an architect? I've met several potential clients over the years where it's obvious that one party in the couple wants to discuss building and the other is going along for the ride. At best, they're passive, but over time they can become actively hostile. I've met couples where one person does all the talking and the other sits with their arms folded, never makes eye contact, and doesn't engage. Meetings like that never turn into building projects. What we have here is a marital dispute trying to resolve itself through the medium of construction. It won't end well for the architect. If Shiv wanted to build something, it would happen, like when she successfully pursued affairs with other people, but Tom could not. If Tom wanted to build something, then Shiv would stop it, like she stopped planning a family with Tom. It takes some degree of life experience for an architect, or indeed anyone, to spot a dysfunctional couple. I usually try to engage both parties in all discussions, but there will always be a dominant partner, one who spends more time driving the project. As long as the other partner is consulted and expresses opinions, things will usually be fine. Silent partners aren't really partners at all. I'm sure there's so much more that could be said about the Roy family and Succession. It's the best TV drama I've watched in years. If you haven't seen it, check it out. Season 4 drops on the 26th of March. My name is Neil, and I regularly make videos about the reality of altering and extending private homes, as well as issues affecting the construction industry and the architecture profession. If you like the sound of that, please subscribe.